Before we get into this podcast, I want to take a moment and let you know that we are talking about fentanyl poisoning and the death of a local 15-year-old boy. If you have little kids in the room, turn this off and watch it later. Go play with your kids. If you have preteens, teenagers, college kids in the room, have them sit down with you and watch this episode because it could save their life or the life of one of their friends. Thank you for watching.
Brandon Dunn and Janel Rodriguez. They are the parents of Noah and the founders of Forever 15. So I want to thank you guys for being here and talking about such an important subject.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you tell us, I want to know, first of all, before we go into Forever 15, can you tell us who Noah was?
Yeah, so if you've seen my presentation, this is how I like to start my presentation because I get that question a lot. Mm-hmm. And I say there's a meme floating around in meme land somewhere, and it's a mom in a grocery store, and she's pushing a shopping cart, but in the front of her grocery cart, like where a baby would sit, is a grown man. And the meme reads, "How Mexican moms treat their sons."
Oh my gosh, that's horrible.
Brandon has sent that to me several years ago in a text, and he said, "This is you with Noah." And I said, "And?"
Yeah.
Like, he was a total mama's boy.
Right.
I mean, just crazy.
Yeah.
But he was a great kid. He, typical teenager TikToks and all kinds of dude perfect challenges and sports and video games, and yeah, it's a good boy.
Yeah. Now, when did you start to see a change in Noah from being, the kid that played sports to the kid that started to adventure into, recreational drugs?
Definitely when COVID hit.
Mm-hmm. And I think COVID took a huge hit on these kids. I don't think people would admit how much it did harm to these kids. They keep saying kids are resilient, but if that were the facts, then why are grown adults in therapy dealing with childhood trauma?
Yeah.
So I don't think we really grasp how much COVID affected these kids.
Right.
And you guys probably got to experience that firsthand.
Yeah.
So as, some kids started developing changing during COVID, and so that's when you started to see it. And
yeah, we noticed it immediately. He started not wanting to take his ADHD medication because he was not in school.
Right.
And, we fought with him, like, it's not just about you being in school. It's like your mental health.
Yeah.
And, we couldn't force it down his throat.
Right.
He started self-medicating with marijuana. Mm-hmm. We would smell it in the house. And, he always had something to say. Like, there were some kids at the park smoking, and I promised Mom I wasn't smoking. And we never really had any issues with Noah, so we just believed him.
Yeah.
Because
he didn't prove anything otherwise,
Yeah. Until I caught him in his room one night.
Oh, yeah.
By the window. Yeah.
Then you second guess everything.
Yeah. But yeah, it started with marijuana, and it was a fight in our home for about a year and a half.
And some people just think like, oh, it's just marijuana, but it's like the gateway drug to everything else, and when I was in school, people would do marijuana and you would associate those kids, that it was like, oh, those are the potheads. You would smell it. You knew who they were. Mm-hmm. Most of the time they were taking a nap on the lawn. It wasn't something major. But now there's all kinds of other things added to it that leads into other things and them trying different aspects and trying to chase another high and a different high and a bigger high. And
right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, our thing, was it's illegal.
Right.
And you're 14.
Right.
Yeah.
and we have babies at home, and no.
Right.
So,
right.
You know, when
But
you
he would
become,
always argue it, you know.
oh yeah,
Oh, well, so-and-so this and so-and-so that. And, you know, we were raised in a very conservative household. Like, I never saw my parents take a drink of alcohol growing up or smoke a cigarette.
Right.
I didn't even know what marijuana was until I got out of high school.
Yeah,
I went to a very, very small high school in a very rural community, and we didn't have that. We didn't have people with drug problems in school, at least that we knew about.
Right.
And possibly it was happening, but I think because the town was so small, it wasn't, you know, a lot of us were shielded from that. So, you know, one of the things like she said, you know, you're 14, you're 15. If you're an adult, it is illegal.
Right.
And if you're an adult and you want to do that, you know, you have to accept those consequences.
For
but
sure.
You're underage and it's illegal. So
Yeah.
we took a really hard line with it.
yeah. Well, for me growing up, it was very different than Brandon's upbringing. My dad was a known drug dealer in East Austin, and we had witnessed several drug busts. So I have always been very open with Noah about drugs and just life in general. I'm very blunt with him. You know, just this is not something that you ever want to go through.
Right.
You never want to put your siblings through this. Like it's traumatizing.
Yeah,
you know?
for sure. So he started doing that at the age of 14?
14.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And then did he start to navigate towards other substances?
Not right away.
Okay.
It was always just pot, vaping.
Which is huge in kids, and I hate
Huge,
it.
yeah.
Hate it.
You know, we would search his room and we'd find vape after vape, you know, and charger after charger. And yeah, so to our knowledge, it was just that. One day, Brandon had taken his phone to search his phone, and we did find that there were certain older kids at the park
Yeah.
offering Percocets.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Oh.
So we knew the parent of that older teenager because he had a sibling Noah's age that they grew up playing football together. So we reached out to the parent and we let them know. And
Yeah. As a parent, I would want to know.
yeah, you know it's so frustrating to me, but some parents just are in denial, you know.
Well, that, and I think some take it offensive, like
Yeah.
that you're like pointing out that they're not a good parent, where I'm like, it takes a village to raise these people to be like model citizens of society, you
Yeah.
know? So let's do this together. So, you know, I'm going to try and help guide your kid. I hope you're helping guide my kid, you know? So
Yeah.
I would want to know. But
Yeah,
no.
I would want to know.
Yeah,
for sure.
And especially before it comes to an incident where it's too late and you could have prevented it and you didn't, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So to our knowledge, Noah wasn't taking. He wasn't, you know, using Percocets. We just knew it was the pot. But in the summer of 21, he and a few friends took my truck on a joyride around Kyle. I reported it stolen,
Right.
and I pressed charges on him.
I probably would do the same. Like I said, we're trying to shape them to models of society.
Yeah. So he had to do 6 months of probation. And we told his probation officer that we wanted him to do outpatient treatment because we knew he had been using pot.
Right.
So he did that for 6 months. And for 6 months, every week, we would take him to South Austin 3 days a week. And he would get random drug tests every week. And he would pass them.
Okay.
So we knew for 6 months he hadn't used.
Right.
And so when in April, when he no longer had to, he finished probation, so he no longer was court ordered to
Required,
be
yeah.
there. We asked him, please, like, stay. Just, you're doing so well.
Right.
Like, he's like, no, I don't need it. I've been clean for 6 months. I can do it, blah, 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 right? Well, we can't force him.
Right.
This was like April 17th. May 8th, we get a phone call. We're at the park with our little girls, and our son is unresponsive, and nobody knows why. But we needed to get to this house immediately. When the officers gave us the address, we knew where he was, and he was not supposed to be there. We had tried to cut him off from being with that particular person. Turns out, throughout the night, Noah had cocaine, benzos, and marijuana in his system.
Oh my gosh.
So he was in ICU on life support for 4 days. And it was a group of 5 boys, and it only affected him that way.
Now, do you think it's because his body had a way of, handling it, or was what he given something that the other kids didn't get?
So ironically, that was the first time that we heard the word fentanyl.
Oh.
The doctor was surprised that there was no fentanyl in his system.
Yeah.
But it didn't alert us to what is fentanyl.
Right. Right.
It didn't alert us at all.
Yeah.
So looking back after reading Noah's autopsy, we found out like he had a heart problem. We found out that he had an enlarged left artery or something like that, which could have been
Right.
a factor. We don't know.
Right.
But on day 4 when he woke up, the first thing he told me was, Mom, I tried Coke last night.
Oh my gosh.
And I said, no, baby, you tried Coke 4 days ago. And he went and looked around and realized where he was at, and he just started crying. And I said, it's okay. We're not upset with you. Just rest up. We'll talk about it when we get released.
Yeah.
We're released a week and a half later. And, he sits down and talks to us, and, I'm sorry. I'll never try anything again. I don't want to die, and I said, Noah, you died.
Yeah.
You were dead. You have the ultimate testimony. God is using you. Use this. And he's like, I will, Mom. I promise I'm going to do better in school this next year. I'm going to do better in football, all these things, right? He's like, Mom, I just want to smoke pot. It calms me down. It relaxes me. It helps me sleep. And at this point, I'm terrified to lose my son.
Right.
We had been dealing, he was working with his pediatrician we thought he had some anxiety going on. And, she asked him, do you smoke? And, he said yes. And, he had a really good relationship with her. And she said, I don't condone it.
Right.
But if you're going to smoke, I would prefer you do it the old-fashioned way. Roll up a joint.
Yeah.
Vaping is horrible for you, So I'm thinking about that conversation with his pediatrician, and I go to Brandon and I said, I can't lose my son. I'm afraid if we don't let him do this, he's going to try something else.
Yeah, he's going to go somewhere else for it.
Yeah. So Brandon, was reluctant, but agreed. And so I sat Noah down and I said, look, we're going to allow you to do this. But at home only, in the backyard. I don't care where you stash it. It's not coming in my home. And you're not allowed to run the streets acting thug life with your friends.
Right.
He said, okay, Mom, I promise. And I kid you not, that was the best summer we had with Noah. Like the summer of 22, he was home. He wanted to go places with us. He wanted to do things.
Really felt like you had your son back.
I felt we had our son back.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, he would come to me at night and say, Mom, I'm going to the backyard. And okay, he'd go, come back in, call it a night. Like, yeah.
And so, like, when he got out of overdosing and got this second chance at life, was there any sort of like recovery for him or any sort of therapy or like rehab for him?
So here's the frustrating part. While Noah was in ICU, I reached out to his the center that he was doing IOPs at,
Right.
outpatient treatment, and they knew that we wanted Noah to be in treatment. So I reached out and I said, if my son makes it out of this, can we put him in treatment? And they said no, not without his consent.
It's horrible.
And I was like, what?
Yeah, because like what 15-year-old is going to willingly sign up for that?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I called a couple other places, and that was the only response I would get. Like, he had to consent to going into treatment.
Which I don't understand, because like your job as their parent is to protect them and guide them and give them a safe environment, and you're trying to do this, but then the system is telling you no, you don't have the rights to do that.
Yeah.
Which is just how backwards this world has become.
Yeah. A friend of mine, she's a mental health provider in Houston. She said, you know, it just blows my mind that, you know, a child needs a parent's signature to go on a field trip.
Yeah.
But
Or even to read a book at school, you know?
But we need their permission to put them in treatment.
Yeah, it's just mind-boggling. Like, you're trying to keep your son alive and protect them and keep them safe, and right now they're in jeopardy of all of that, causing harm to themselves or even worse. And you would think that you have that right as long as they're under the age of 18 to do what you need to do, you know? That's got to be so frustrating.
It was.
And something definitely needs to change with that, where, you know, we work together as a team rather than trying to pin a parent against their kid. Because like I said, what 15-year-old is willingly going to sign up for that?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and even though he was scared, I really truly believe that he was scared, that incident terrified him. I truly believe that. His recovery when he was released was going to be a long one, because he had aspirated so much vomit.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
His lung was just not in good shape at all.
Yeah.
And I told him, like, you will not survive another one. But like I said, I believed that he was terrified. Like, that really scared him, because, you know, we had a good summer with him, and he even attended his first 2 days of school. And he was excited about going to talk to Coach Hoffman, you know, and getting his grades back up to par. And
Yeah. And then he ended up overdosing in August. So take us through that night that has forever changed your life.
I was recovering from a C-section. I had just had a baby, and so I was sleeping on the couch, and I was also dealing with some postpartum anxiety. So I would sleep with my phone playing music and one of those things to monitor my heart.
Right.
I thought I was gonna die.
Someone that deals with anxiety feels like you're in a constant panic attack.
Yeah, it's horrible. So I wasn't quite asleep yet, but I had just laid down and put the music on, and I get a phone call. And we had Noah's phone. He had lost that privilege for whatever reason. But we dropped him off at a friend's house Saturday evening. And I recognized the friend's number calling. So I thought, maybe he wanted some food or send him a Slurpee or something, right? When I answer the phone, it's a parent just in a frantic, but the first thing I heard was just this scream, just an ugly, ugly scream. So I knew something was wrong.
Yeah.
And the mom on the other end of the line was, Janel, I think Noah overdosed. And I said, what? No. And I'm screaming, no. Because I knew he wouldn't make it.
Yeah.
So I'm pacing my house back and forth, just screaming, and Brandon hears me. He thinks I'm going into an anxiety attack. And I tell him, it's not me, it's Noah. So he throws on, he gets ready to leave. And, I still had enough sense in me not to take my children there.
Oh, yeah.
So,
because you definitely don't want them to experience that, and you didn't know what you were walking into.
Right. Yeah. Especially for my little girl, who was 4 at the time. Noah was
Big
her
brother.
best friend, big
Yeah.
brother. So, we couldn't rush out of the house.
Mm-hmm.
So I have this mom on speakerphone, and I'm texting my family to go to Noah because everybody knew where this friend lived. And I'm texting my church family for somebody to come to the house to be with the babies. And, the mom's telling me, like, she's been doing CPR on him for 20 minutes. And she said every time I push on him, there's vomit coming out of his nose. And,
gosh.
I don't say this part of my presentation very often or at all, but I was on the phone, yelling, like, telling Brandon, like, I'm going to lose my son. I'm going to lose my son. Like, I just knew.
Yeah.
25 minutes later, my pastor's wife showed up to my house, and we're able to leave. And we live here in Buda, and he was in San Marcos.
Mm-hmm.
So dealing with anxiety, the doctors tell you to tell yourself what you're going to do ahead of time. Talk to yourself so you don't get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So I'm telling myself, when we get there, this is what I'm going to do. Right? I'm going to jump out of the car. I'm going to run inside because he just needs to know that I'm there. He just needs to hear me. He just needs to feel me, and he's going to be okay. We get to the scene, and I jump out of the car, and I'm ready to go inside, and my mom approaches me. My parents were there. My sister, her husband, and her kids were there. My 2 brothers and their wives were there. She approaches me, And I remember my dad being behind her a ways, my niece being a ways behind him, my sister and my brother-in-law off to the side over here. And my mom just stares at me. She puts her head down and shakes her head. And I knew that he was gone.
Yeah.
And I just fell to the ground. Cried and screamed and what happened?
Yeah.
You promised us.
Yeah, like what changed?
What was it? Yeah. First responders came out and, they had worked on Noah for over 45 minutes. He was given 2 Narcan injections and he just didn't respond to it. But again, I think his lungs not being fully recovered had something to do with that. They asked if I wanted to go in and see him, and I chose not to.
Yeah, I don't know if I would either.
Yeah.
'Cause, like, you want to remember him like that, You don't want to remember him how this mom was describing him over the phone.
Yeah. Yeah. Saturday when we dropped him off, it was about 6:30 or 7 in the evening. On our way there, I was telling him how proud I was of him. And I always told Noah when he turned 16, I was going to have him the party of the century, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, what do you want to do for your 16th birthday? And he's like, oh, I don't know. I just want some tres leches cake. And so I got on the phone with my cake lady immediately and I booked her because she gets pretty booked. And we get to the house and, he's saying bye to all his siblings. And I said, we'll pick you up after church tomorrow. And he said, okay. And I said, I love you. And he said, I love you too. And, he starts walking into the house. Brandon starts driving off.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, no, stop. I want to see him walk in the house.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never done that before, ever.
It's like something told you. Yeah. Mm. And that was before his 16th birthday. So you never got his tres leche cake?
We still got it. We had a party. We still got it, but he didn't have it. So, yeah, that was just a very confusing time, like I really thought he was scared enough to not try anything else.
Yeah, or they say like scared straight, that you're on the other end of it is what you're hoping, and that you're not going to get those calls or those conversations again. I just can't imagine like your mom having to be the one to tell you that.
Well, my dad, when he's shared his side of the story a few times, and he feels cowardly for not being able to face me and tell me that he made my mom do it.
Mm-mm.
But they were actually in the room while Noah was being worked on. My dad was begging him to wake up. Let's go home. And they were very upset when the first responders called it. I said, no, like, why are you calling it? Keep going, keep going.
Yeah, because I'm sure they even know, like, if they are able to make a miracle happen, like the quality of life that Noah would have. It's as parents, like, you never expect to have that conversation. I mean, you always are expected to go before your kid. So, like, not only, like, your parents to have to lose a grandkid, but to express that they lost a grandkid to their own daughter, like, that's just a lot. So how did, like, the community and everybody, like, rally around you? Because, like, I'm sure this was probably the first incident of people hearing of a kid local that was fentanyl poisoned.
Well, Noah wasn't the first one that summer. There had been a few others. And I remember when Garrett passed away, Noah called me into his room and he was very sad. And I said, "What's wrong?" And he said, "My friend Garrett died. He overdosed." And I said, "Baby." And he said, "Mom, I met him in summer school and he was really cool, and and like," I said, "You gotta be better, baby."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because this could be you.
Yeah, and that was in July.
Ugh. It was incredibly sad, because, like, you think of that as an example and that you were trying to strive not to do that, You saw what the pain you're feeling and the pain his family felt. You would want not to do that to your own, And I think that's where people don't understand with the fentanyl that it's not an accidental overdose. It's a poisoning.
Right.
And, the smallest dose is lethal. And these kids don't understand that. They don't even know half of what they're taking.
Right. Mm-hmm.
The parents don't understand it either.
No.
Yeah.
So, was the community, like, supportive and, like, wanting to, like, bring this to the light and educate people?
Yeah, I feel, I'm from Buda, elementary to high school.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of people here, and I do feel like we were surrounded just by the whole community. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't until we attended a press conference in September of 22. We just went because they had made a couple of arrests, and we just wanted to know a little bit more about it. The media got word of who we were, and we had just lost our son. And then Anthony Hippolito approached. Actually, Mark Jones introduced us.
He's amazing.
I know. I love Mark.
My daughter has a cow on his property. She calls him Farmer Jones.
Yeah, he's. We attended First Baptist Church together. So
Okay.
that's all right. We know the Joneses, but he introduced us to Anthony, and to be honest, I don't even remember how the conversation went. It was just kind of in a fog. But basically, it was like, we're going to start doing these presentations. When you're ready,
Right.
we would love to have you. And I just remember telling him, I'm ready.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like, the next week, we were already starting with our presentations.
Yeah, because I'm sure your logic on it is like, I'm experiencing this pain and this grief. I don't want anybody else to experience this.
Yes.
So, and I don't think what most people think is, like, I think they think of, like, Hayes as just this wholesome little county, But with I-35 and you've got, 1626, it's easy thoroughfare for trafficking of drugs and how easily accessible it is to these kids.
Yeah.
So I think that the knowledge that these parents need to have and to open up their eyes, I think a lot of them think, like, oh, that's never going to happen to me. I'm in law enforcement. That's not going to happen to me. My kid's an all-star football player. That's not going to happen to me, When it shows that it doesn't pick a specific race, a specific gender, a specific family. I mean, drugs can happen to anybody.
Yeah. Yeah, I was kind of, I was upset with a particular friend of mine. Her son grew up playing football with Noah, and she said, he's too smart to do anything like that.
Wrong words, honey. Wrong words. Who's her name? What's her name?
Wow. Like, how dare you?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know us.
Right.
Like, this wasn't something that Noah ever saw us doing.
No. No.
He grew up in a stable home.
Right.
Christian home.
Right. And that's the thing is where people try and stereotype it, and it's not, like I said, it doesn't pick a specific person. Like, nobody's, exempt from this happening to them. Like you said, they both have a stable family. You went to church. He had a loving, supportive, household. You would never imagine that to happen, and here you are, So I think people need to, like, just realize that they're not off limits. Like, it can happen to them. And just like I said, it's not an accidental overdose. It's a poisoning. So your kid could be, I'm going to partake in, smoking weed, not realizing it's laced with something else.
Yeah.
So something that might seem innocent to them could be devastating and rocking their whole world.
Yeah. Yeah. A week before Noah passed, we were sitting around in the living room. I was reading a book to my daughter, and Noah was in the kitchen making like a fried peanut butter and jelly sandwich in the air fryer, a TikTok thing. And
as long as he's not burning down the house.
The news was on, the TV was on, but I wasn't really paying much attention to it. But they did bring up rainbow fentanyl.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of listened while I'm still reading to my 4-year-old. And I just told her, Jolene, if you see anything that you think is candy on the ground, don't eat it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't eat anything that anybody tries to give you.
Yeah.
Only if mommy, daddy, or P-Rob, which was her children's pastor at the time, gives you a candy, then that's okay.
Right.
But not from the floor, not from any of your other friends, because it might be poison.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, okay, mommy. And then Noah looks around the corner from the kitchen into the living room. And I said, Noah, that's for you too, baby. He said, okay, I know. But the news didn't frighten me.
Right.
To look into it.
Mm-hmm.
Just like the doctor.
Right.
In May.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was afraid of COVID. Everybody was afraid of catching a cold.
Mm-hmm.
But this is different because people stigmatize it. Only the druggies do it, and that's not true.
Right. No, for sure. I read that the CDC said last year it was 120 people die a day of fentanyl poisoning.
Yeah.
It's over 200 now.
Yeah. So then I recently read where it's closer to almost 300. And then I thought, I'm like, how is this not like rocking people's worlds? Like, then I was like, okay, what can put it into some sort of like measurement for people to understand? A commercial airline holds almost 300 people on it. If it made the news every day of a plane crashing,
That's good.
don't you think that would just change the trajectory of most people's lives, how they functioned? But the media and the news want to continue and say accidental overdose.
Yeah.
Or like you explained that there was 3 kids that are on your billboard that have died of fentanyl poisoning. I only knew of 1. It's like they pick and choose what actually makes the attention when all of these tragic stories deserve the attention. It's going to take all of them to change and rock people's world, to take it seriously.
That's one of the graphics that Anthony uses during the presentations with the kids because, over 100,000 people died in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
And, kids don't grasp that.
No.
So he shows a picture of DKR in Austin, and that is like 115,000 people or something like that. Mm-hmm. And he's like, that's how many people. Enough to fill that stadium is how many people died in 2021. I was looking at some statistics the other day, and in 2022, Travis County led the state of Texas in fentanyl deaths per 100,000 people.
Oh my gosh.
And nobody talks about it. We can't even get into the schools there.
Yeah.
They don't want to. We've been to Del Valley.
Yeah.
And we've been to Eanes ISD, which is Westlake. But Austin ISD, we can't get in there. They don't want to.
Started on the other stuff they allow.
They don't want to. They don't want to address it. And then Bexar County is third. And then Harris County is second. And we're right here.
Yeah.
We're right between Bexar County and Travis County.
You're on the I-35 corridor.
And I don't remember where we were. And I don't remember who told us. Maybe you remember that with our county population versus the amount of deaths, we actually come out like the highest.
Oh.
You know, we have like 350,000 people, I think, in the county. But with the number of people we've lost, I think it was up in Rockwall or somewhere that somebody mentioned that for our size versus the amount of deaths, it's easily like the highest.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a friend who is a teacher at high school in West Virginia. West Virginia leads in the fentanyl overdosing or poisoning deaths there. And she said that they're not educating the high schoolers there of like what can happen if you do this, how this is going to devastate your family. These are the choices you should be making. It's all of these staff members have a Narcan. So if you're choosing to do that, know that you're in a safe place. And so to me, it blew my mind because I'm like, you're allowing these kids to basically play like Russian roulette with their life. And like, with your own situation, 2 things of Narcan didn't even touch Noah. So it shouldn't be used as a safety net.
Right.
And when I was growing up, we had DARE. We had police officers come in and teach you about like, don't take anything from anybody, when you're at a party, don't take anything from anybody that you don't know and stuff. These are the things that you need to watch out for. And now it's like none of that has become a focal point. It's all about, STAR testing and, the attendance. Don't even get me started on that. But it's your priorities have become where these kids, I homeschool my kids for many reasons. But these kids have become a number and a dollar sign.
Yeah.
They lose their face. They lose their story. And they don't see the writing on the wall of what's happening to be able to help them.
Right.
They're outnumbered,
And you can't, like, DARE wouldn't work now.
Right.
Like, there's the access to information.
Yes.
You can't just scare.
Right.
You can't scare the kids straight.
Well,
It's
yeah.
not going to work.
And that's a conversation I've had with my husband is like growing up, we had, the news in the morning, you had a newspaper, and you had the news in the evening. Now we have news all over the time, different platforms. So it's almost like they've become desensitized to tragic events.
Yep.
And it makes a blurb for 45 minutes one day, and then a week later, you never even mentioned it again. And so I don't know how we get to these kids, but also get to the parents that you might be taking your kid's phone away, but is that enough?
Yeah.
You might think you know where your kid's at, but are they really there? I don't know. It's going to take parents collaborating with each other. Like what I said is that it's a village. We're in this together. And, take away your personal feelings of you being offended that you're not this picture perfect parent, Pinterest worthy, that it's real life. These things are affecting our kids.
Yeah.
So
And that's one of the things that was hard to deal with early on. I watch a lot of YouTube. I watch a lot of podcasters, and I watch a lot of Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
And one of the things he said, like that he does, is he stopped reading comments. Because
they're trolls.
You will ruin yourself by reading comments.
Yep.
And I had to convey that to her early on because she was reading comments. And a lot of the comments are, we should have done this or we didn't do that. And, I would have jumped up and ran straight to my baby as soon as I got the call. And all these things where people are very quick to say you didn't do this, that, or the other right. Like, we did everything that we could do. You know, we took a hardline stance, and we took Noah's door off because he was being so secretive, and we took his phone. He just got an old phone from one of his friends and used it on Wi-Fi. His friends would come over and they would log into my Wi-Fi, and I would pause their device so they couldn't use Wi-Fi in my house. And I would tell them, I'm not going to contribute to this stuff going on.
Right.
And, you know, we searched his room and we did all that stuff. And it's, you can't lock your kids down.
No.
Your kids are going to be out in the world and they're going to make choices.
Yeah.
And, you know, when we were kids, bad choices usually resulted in, you know, you got in trouble with the cops because you were drinking underage, or, you know, something stupid. You vandalized something, or you got in a fender bender in your parents' car. You know, bad choices wouldn't immediately end your life.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think in my high school, we had a few kids that died of car accidents, you know, but there was never the drug overdose or any of that stuff. I mean, my freshman year, there was a kid, it was like within the first few weeks of school, and we got pulled into the cafeteria, and they're like, yeah, he overdosed on Freon. I'm like, how is that even possible? Like, how? You know, and here I'm this young, like, you know, 12-year-old. I'm like, how, what? I had so many questions, you know, and so they had to explain to us. I'm like, who thinks of these things, you know? And I think that's where parents don't think is like, yeah, you might be telling your kid, no, they're going to become resourceful and find another way. You know, and so we just have to like band together and, you know, try and raise them to make smart decisions and wise decisions that aren't going to end their life and change their parents' world forever, you know. And like I said, you go to these parties, you don't know what you're being handed, and you don't know what you're taking. And you know, it used to be a thing where you didn't like this kid, you took it out on them physically in a fight. Now there's social media, and you create a whole platform for everybody to hate them, you know, and then you do things for clout where you're going to film a fight, you know, and then now you got to fear that, like, oh, is this person going to slip your kid something because they don't like your kid? Yep. So these fears as parents that our parents didn't have to worry about, now we have to worry about. So... well, then you guys tell me when you guys created Forever 15.
15 project has only been a project since January of 22.
Oh, okay.
Wait, 23.
23.
Okay,
This year.
so it's not even a
this
year
year.
old.
Not a year old yet.
Okay.
Yeah. And I knew early on, you know, that I wanted Noah to be more than a sad story because Noah was a great kid.
Yeah.
So we didn't know exactly what we wanted to do. We didn't know. We already had been from September to December. We had already done 50 presentations with Anthony. And just one day, I was just like, Forever 15 project. And he looked up, you know, there's a couple in our church who also lost a child, you know, to cancer, childhood cancer. And they have a very successful nonprofit. So we got with them, and they gave us the steps, and Brandon followed them one by one. And here we are.
So it's become like your passion project.
Yeah, actually it was the billboard. I really wanted a billboard. So in November of 22, I really reached out to the community because billboards are expensive.
Yeah. Which you would think for your cause, they'd be like, let's donate it, you know? Yeah. But let's not get me started on that.
Well, okay, so I wanted the billboard here in Kyle, the digital billboard, and I wanted the faces of the 3 boys because they're from here, and I wanted their friends to see. Like,
it touch home, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, Media Choice, you know, I paid for 3 months for that billboard. The community stepped up and like gave us all the funds for that. And then they were like, the first day it went up, it went up on a Sunday. The Monday, the lady I was working with Media Choice called me and said, we have so many messages about this billboard. we're going to offer y'all, was it like 5 or 6 across Texas? Like
Oh,
in San
nice.
Antonio and
Okay.
Converse and Jarrell and Smithville. She's like, we're just going to put them up there for y'all. And so we had all of those billboards. And,
Yeah.
And they run indefinitely when there's free space available. So,
Yeah.
so that was good.
Yeah, that was good. You made it better.
Yeah.
So you speak at schools if they allow you.
Yeah.
Well, we have never had to reach out to a school and ask.
Okay.
We are sought out by a lot of schools, but we have not heard from Travis County. Yeah,
Which is
at all.
so disappointing.
We did do a middle school in Southwest Austin. Is it Bailey Middle School? We did that middle school. And
Okay.
I think that's the only Austin school.
And I
that we've
think
done.
that one other one was part of Eanes, the one right there off Mopac. Isn't that part of Eanes ISD? I don't remember the name of it.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm sure as you go to so many, they all kind of blur.
And it's hard to know what districts were.
Right.
Especially in Austin. Yeah.
So, what are your plans with Forever 15? Like, how are you wanting to go national, worldwide?
Well, when our billboard came out, it went. I mean, it took off. Like our name was out there, and we were reached out by Jim Jordan's office.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it was funny because we're driving down the highway. He's driving, and I'm just going through the
We
email.
were in downtown Buda.
Oh, okay. Were we? I don't remember. He was driving, and I'm reading this email, and I'm like, and he's like, grabs my phone, and he's like, "What is this real?" And I'm like, "Who is that?"
I pulled off the road. I pulled off the road immediately, and I grabbed when I heard her say Jim Jordan, because she doesn't know.
Right.
I
Yeah.
followed politics off and on for since I was a teenager. Like I remember, listening to Rush Limbaugh and WOAI, and because where I grew up, it was mostly San Antonio radio stations, and listening to Rush Limbaugh. So I just followed politics, and she said Jim Jordan. We were in downtown Buda,
He's like, I remember exactly where we were.
by Summer Moon, and we were coming this way, and she said Jim Jordan, and I just pulled in the first spot,
Brakes.
and I grabbed the phone, and I'm reading it. And so Jeremy Haynes was the person that sent it to us. So I Googled Jeremy Haynes.
Like, is this legit?
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, he worked for Ted Cruz. He worked for this person. He worked for that person. Okay. Then I Google his phone number and make sure that's legit.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, this looks legit. And it was, they invited us to the first House Judiciary Committee hearing of this year in February. And we got that email 3 days before, 4 days before. And we called and we ironed out some details. They were kind of dodgy when it came to giving us money to get there. It was kind of made out that, we have to get there. So we contacted... I started texting. Right, I started texting my family because they're very into politics. So I was texting them. Look what we got. Look what we got invited to. We texted one of our friends, Hunter, whose son had passed away from fentanyl. Also, all these like hardcore right wing, following politics people, because it's Jim Jordan. It's a big deal.
Yeah,
and. So people started donating money for us to fly to Washington, for us to pay for a room. So we went up there, and we got there and we met with Jim's staff. They took us to the Capitol, and they took us by Chip Roy's office. Because we were in Hays County, they thought Chip Roy was our representative, but we're on this side of the line, which we'll get to later. But they took us to Chip's office. My parents, my sister, most of our friends all live in Chip Roy's district. So we met with Chip for about an hour because he's on the committee also. We told, our story. We told Noah's story. And the next day we went. It wasn't on Capitol Hill, though. It was in one of the little off buildings. But we went to Capitol Hill. And when we were talking to Jeremy, and I don't remember the other woman's name. It was one of his counsel, their legal counsel. They're like, oh, it's just going to be a few hours, go up there and read your statement, and they're going to ask you some questions here and there. We were up there all day. And
do they provide you snacks?
Yeah. And they provided us a lunch. They brought food in, and it was good, but it was also upsetting because it devolved into the fighting back and forth. But we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
So after that, though, we took off even more. People started. We had to stay over an extra day to do interviews. I did an interview with Fox and Friends. I did an interview with Laura Ingraham. I did a Newsmax interview. I don't remember the show. Janel did 2 interviews, and then people just started emailing us. Our email. We hadn't even got our 501c3 stuff yet. We had filed it, and people were emailing us, just reaching out, donating money,
which
asking
is
us
great
to go speak.
People are obviously seeing that this is needed and a cause that they got to back.
Yeah.
So.
And we just started taking off from there. And like Janel said, we don't seek people out.
Right.
They contact us. We've been to several conferences. We went to Emerging Drug Trends Conference. We went to a counties. National Association of Counties here in Austin. We went to Crimes Against Children Conference in Dallas just to network. We set up our booth. We have our information, our little freebies, our wristbands and stuff, our business cards, and people reach out from everywhere. South Carolina, New Mexico, Louisiana, Kansas, New York, but nothing ever came of that.
They got a lot going on right now.
But it's been very, I don't want to say word of mouth, but it almost is word of mouth. We don't have an advertising campaign. We don't have, famous people out there promoting us. We don't have this big organization. It's us too.
Right.
That's,
Yeah.
So.
And I think that's almost what's so upsetting about, this is I think if it really affected somebody that people look as Hollywood or some sort of socialite.
But it has.
But it, like I said, it gives 1 minute of attention and then it dissipates, So it's you would think even it's affecting your own, you would care. And I also don't understand why there has to be a political backing behind kids dying of fentanyl poisoning. It shouldn't be a political thing. It's just wrong. You need to prevent it from happening. You need to be protecting the kids. You need to be protecting the border. You need to be protecting this nation. And I don't understand why that has.
They equate the two in their heads, but they don't want to come out and say it in public.
Right. Yeah.
We've worked a lot with state legislature on things. And as all you guys know, our representative is a Democrat. But, we put that aside. I mean, we're not going to not work with somebody just because they share different political views.
Right.
And she, her office has been really great with helping us. I mean, we've done a lot of good in this last session at the state level.
Yeah. Well, so with the passion behind Forever 15, then drove you to run for Congress?
Yes.
Okay, so tell us how that came about.
in my head, a lot of it was from when we went to Washington. You know, you see all this stuff on TV, these hearings, and it's like that all day long. It's just, you know, the committee hearing was about border security, and it immediately just went left into immigration. And I'm sitting there the whole day while these people fight about immigration. And I'm like, what? Why?
Yeah.
Like,
the theatrics of it all.
yeah, I'm not here for that. Yes, I care about immigration.
Right.
But I care about the fentanyl that's coming across the border. One of the sheriffs we met at the One Pill Can Kill conference is from Terrell County, which is Sanderson, out past Del Rio, out west. And he had commented on one of my posts the other day about, you know, the left wants to argue that, you know, it's all coming in from the ports of entry and all this stuff. And the right wants to argue about, you know, it's because of all the immigration. It doesn't really matter.
Right.
It's here.
Yeah. How do we keep it from coming
And
here?
we need to address that it's here and it's a problem. And nobody's even doing that.
Right.
You know, like I said, you know, we met with Chip. I know Chip Roy has talked a lot about it. Even before this current political cycle, our rep has not. We haven't heard from our rep. I haven't been able to find anything where our representative at the national level even addresses the issue at all, except to say that it's not the immigrants. And it's frustrating. And that was the main reason behind it, because there are very few representatives in Congress that are, this is going to sound bad, normal people, like regular people. I don't want to say normal people. Regular people.
Humble.
You know, they're all wealthy attorneys or whatever.
Because it takes money to run for politics.
Well, but that doesn't go into your pocket when you're done. It's not supposed to.
No.
You know, what originally was intended is you're a representative of your community.
Yep.
You go to Washington. You speak for
Your
the people
community.
in your community.
Your elected
and
people.
then you go home. You don't, it's not a full-time job.
Right.
Where you get to make money on the side off of whatever you got going on.
Right.
And people don't, you know, people don't feel represented.
No. I think they don't feel represented. I think they definitely don't feel heard.
Yeah.
Or even, you know, that they matter.
And it's always the talking point of the day. It's always, you know, we're going to go out and get the other side. They did this, so we're going to make sure and expose what they did wrong.
Right.
And, you know, people are struggling. We're not wealthy people.
Yeah.
You know, I work a regular full-time job. She works a part-time job so she can manage the nonprofit and homeschool our 6-year-old.
Kudos to you for that.
And a lot of families out there are just like us.
Yeah.
And, you know, every day you're up there complaining about what Hunter Biden did or what, you know, this person did or you know, which are important things.
Right.
You know, some really bad things happened that were mishandled, but the American people are struggling day to day.
Yeah.
And y'all aren't addressing that.
No. Yeah.
Take care of that first, and then you can fight about what you want to fight about.
Right. I mean, I have a saying that you can't take care of your front yard until you take care of your backyard.
Exactly.
And so, like, you know, we want to help out every other country, but we're not taking care of our own people.
Exactly.
And I think that if things don't start to change, you're going to see a huge revolt that I don't think they're prepared to handle. And it's going to take people like you that are upset with how things are going and think, you know what? I don't have any special interest. I don't care about making money to afford a second and a third and a fourth home. I want to just make a difference for my family, for my community, for, you know, our friends. So we're not having to have these hard conversations of how we're going to keep our kids safe, how we're going to be able to afford things, like, you know. So I think it's going to take a lot of just regular people that are fed up to make the change and the difference.
And just, I don't know, everybody's so polarized.
Yes. And they want the divide. Like, they want us to fight with each other. They want us to hate each other.
But you're never going to get anything done.
No. It's constant. It's a 3-ring circus of distractions.
I read a survey the other day, and it was, different things about what average voters were concerned about. And I don't remember what the top 2 were. But the third one on the list, and it was like 61 and 62% for both sides, was they don't have confidence in the government to work together to solve problems. Mm-hmm. The third most important issue,
which I believe,
the American people don't trust the federal government to work together to solve the country's problems.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and I've heard some of them say, like, when the cameras are rolling for C-SPAN, it's this whole, like, dramatized event, but then they're not really doing anything behind the scenes or doing anything in their office. They're just trying to make it look like they're doing something for their people. Yeah. And it's like, I don't care about the theatrics. I want to see actions. I don't care about your words. Like,
Yeah, and that's, like I was looking at Greg Casar's voting record because he's the representative that I'm running against. And every piece of legislation that's been proposed, almost everyone, he's voted against. Mm-hmm. Because when you look at the text, there's provisions in there, especially the appropriations bills, of how you can't use any of this money for critical race theory or, promoting LGBTQ in schools and stuff like that. And they're taking these hardline positions of voting against things because they have small things in there they don't like. Mm-hmm. And, I understand that. It's not supposed to be that way, but apparently you can't. Nobody wants to do single item legislation.
Right.
They want to do these huge packages. Mm-hmm. I don't know why. I guess it takes up less time or whatever the case may be. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know how it works.
Because they only want to work 3 weeks out of 365 days.
And so, you're voting down DOD appropriations. You're voting down Homeland Security appropriations. You're voting down VA appropriations. You're voting down nutrition program appropriations for funding like SNAP, WIC, child nutrition programs, things like that. You're voting down all these programs because they have some anti-woke things in there. Mm-hmm. And then you complain to your constituents that the Republicans want to cut their programs. Mm-hmm. They're trying to fund the programs, but you don't want to vote for them because a very small section of the population as a whole wants you to vote against those inclusions.
Right.
And that's not fair to the other constituents in your district.
Yeah.
And it's not fair to people across the country that are depending on, Homeland Security is pretty important.
Yeah.
And you don't want to fund it. Border security is pretty important. You don't want to fund it. Mm-hmm. And then they come out and say, well, the Republicans don't want to, they want to take your SNAP benefits, or they want to take your VA benefits, or they want to take your Social Security. Like, we don't want to take those things, but we want the money for them to be spent properly.
Right. Not allocated to other things.
Yeah.
So, it's like when you do like a relief package, like, oh, this amount of money is going to go to this, but then all these other things are going to funnel this museum and this art thing. And I'm like, why does that matter? Like, why are they hurting? During COVID, why are you funding a museum? It shouldn't be open according to you. So,
and those things are those are the things that are frustrating. And a lot of people don't even follow that stuff.
No.
So they just take what they're told.
Right.
And they don't.
Or they read a headline.
We have all this technology and information at our fingertips, and people don't even look to see what's really going on.
Right.
And That's one of the main reasons, you know, and I've always felt that way. It's not like some new awakening. But most of it has to do with the fentanyl issue.
Yeah, you want
especially
them to address
now,
it.
I got really upset about Biden's meeting with G, and afterwards he's talking about fentanyl. And I'm like, where were you 2 years ago? You know, fentanyl's not new. It's been on the rise since 15, 16, 17. But in the last 2 years or so, if you look at the data, it takes off like a rocket. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And a lot of that has to do with the current administration and their policies and the ease of which it can come across the southern border.
Right.
Is some of it coming with migrants? Maybe.
Right.
Is most of it coming through the ports? Probably. You know, it still comes in overseas. You can still buy it on the dark web. You can still smuggle it in. You know, my reasoning was this. If our border patrol, our border security people are overwhelmed handling the influx of migrants, they can't do other functions of their job.
Yeah, 100%.
They can't stop people coming in. And one of the talking points at the hearing was, well, it's U.S. citizens smuggling it in from Mexico. Okay. If that's what it is, then we need to be placing extra scrutiny on people coming back from Mexico that are citizens. We can't just wave them through.
Yeah.
But if you're overwhelmed processing the extra flow of immigrants, you can't do that.
Right.
And that's the point that I try to make.
Well, yeah, there's not enough resources.
It's not necessarily that the immigrants are the boogeymen and they're bringing in all these drugs, because that's foolish. That's foolish for anybody to think that. But, you know, it exacerbates the problem.
Right. Right.
If you want to do something, if the cartels want to bring drugs in, are you going to risk coming in when it's on lockdown, or are you going to wait until they're overwhelmed?
When there's a surge.
Yeah. And you can come through.
Yeah.
I mean, it should be common sense.
Yeah.
But it's not.
I find common sense not very common these days. So.
Well, I think it's there, but a lot of it is hidden.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of it isn't, you know, they know.
Right. Yeah.
The other side, they know. They're not dumb enough to believe that, you know.
Well, I don't know. They seem to not know how cocaine showed up in our White House.
They know, but they can't say because then they would be out of a job and they want to be there. And I don't, you know, I want to go there to make a difference. But if you think I'm not doing my job or I'm tired of being there, then I'm not going to be there. I'm not going there to get insider stock tips so I can be a millionaire.
Right.
You know, it's not about that for me.
I wish that we would implement performance reviews for like Senate and Congress.
Well, it should be the elections, but
yeah.
no, it's like that movie I was talking about the other day. I can't remember what it was. It was an Eddie Murphy movie, and the guy that was the congressman died like right before the election.
Miraculously, just
and his middle name was the same as the congressman's first name, so he ran just on the name, and he won. And he was a con man. Eddie Murphy's character was a con artist, and he got elected off of name recognition. So he goes up there and starts trying to do his thing, but then he ends up actually carrying and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But that's what I tell. Like, people go in and vote for a name,
right?
Or a not even a name. They vote for the party affiliation.
Right.
And that happened in San Marcos.
Yes.
With the county clerk.
Yep.
And you get people voted into office just because they have a letter and nobody knows anything about them. They don't know where they really stand on things.
Right.
And they just trust them to go up there and do what they're supposed to do.
Right. Right.
And, you know, I'm not super smart in politics, but I know what's right and wrong.
Well, and you just want to make a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. which needs to happen. There needs to be some change, some sort of difference. It definitely needs to bring attention to what's going on here in the back, the backyard of Austin, and bring it to the national attention of like, look, this is a problem. Like, and we don't want to blame it all on, migration and everything. Regardless of your view of how it's coming here, it's a problem. It needs to be handled.
Exactly.
And that's the bottom line of it all.
And that's how we've looked at it from day one.
Yeah.
We want to work, as a nonprofit, we want to work with whoever wants to handle this problem.
Yeah.
Whether it's border security or whether it's harm reduction tools and legislation, treatment, mental health. There's a lot of different components to it. It's not, locking down the border is not going to stop the fentanyl problem.
No, it's definitely not.
We'll never arrest our way out of the problem either. But those are all important pieces.
Right.
And they all have to be there or it's not going to work.
For sure.
And that's just, that's everything we're dealing with right now. The economy,
It seems
everything.
like a giant uphill battle, but I'm about to pull up my sleeves and get into it.
Well, we have to start hitting the neighborhoods. Everybody's kind of been on break for the holidays, but it's about to start ramping up. And we're trying to get our team assembled, and it's hard.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Running the nonprofit's hard, but running for office is really hard.
Oh, I know. I've helped school board members run, and I'm sometimes out in an inflatable unicorn costume on the corner to encourage people to vote. So I totally get it.
Smart. I have a Slurpee costume.
Yeah, I'll be down to get in a costume any day.
We're trying to find fundraising. I need to find a campaign manager, like all the things that I have no idea. I've met with a couple of really good consultants that the county party has turned me on to, and they've been a help, but there's a lot of work to do. There are two other people that have filed for sure for the primary, and one other possible. So I could have as many as 4 primary challengers. The districts, East Pflugerville, East Austin, East Hayes, all the way down to Northeast San Antonio and Central San Antonio.
Dang, it's that big?
Yeah, it's a weird district.
That is bizarre.
It runs, once you get to it tapers down into San Marcos, and between South Hayes County and Bexar County, it just runs right down 35. It was to connect the two areas, basically. So it does include some of Comal County, but it hugs 35 really close.
So does it include a good old Texas state?
A very small part.
Okay.
They drew around that. That's CHIPS.
Okay.
CHIP has everything. So it runs, this neighborhood's in it. It runs down Loop 4 till you get to 35. It also it's Jack C. Hayes Trail around to Kyle. So everything east of Jack C. Hayes and Kyle. It kind of goes down, I'm going to call it Rebel Road. It's Veterans Drive.
It was Fajita at one point in time.
Whatever. Fajita Drive, whatever it's
I live
called.
all of that. I was like, can we just go back to Rebel? Like,
I've been here for 26 years, and we call it Rebel Road.
Yeah.
So it follows that down to Kyle, does this weird thing around the streets of downtown Kyle, and then goes south.
Okay. So hometown Kyle's in there?
No.
What?
That's CHIPS.
Oh, okay. Well, okay.
I guess you're in hometown Kyle.
I am. I was like, I can rally our HOA. Like,
No, and we have a lot of friends in hometown Kyle. And it's like, you can wear my button, you can spread the word, but it's east of hometown Kyle, out to Highway 21 in Hayes County.
Gotcha.
It pretty much follows 21 and then 35 up to Kyle, kind of snakes out a little bit into Buda, and then back over.
So we need to create like pods, people in pods for you in different areas.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's not a lot of Hayes County precinct chairs and for the Republican Party in my area.
Yeah.
we've met a couple. We're really good friends with one of them in our own neighborhood.
You can carpool.
So, yeah. I don't know anything about two of the people running. I think one of them's a retired sheriff from California.
Don't hold that against them, okay? Because I'm a former Californian.
The other one, I think, is a guy from Alaska.
Recovering California.
Yes. I don't claim it.
And then another one lives over in Sunfield.
Okay.
So, but I think, we've got a really good shot with our message, with, what we've been doing, as far as working in the community. I think a lot of people are going to see that, we're really invested in helping people.
Right.
And even if after I'm done in March, if I don't make it through the primary, the nonprofit's still going to be going.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
our main thing. Mm-hmm. We're trying to get that self-sustaining.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the ultimate goal, we already do it full-time. The ultimate goal is it to be our full-time job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because it definitely needs to be a message for everybody to
Yeah.
know and,
Yeah.
be able to recognize and create some sort of atmosphere where we can help these kids and
Yeah.
keep them from having to go through all of that.
And
Yeah.
Hays County's been great. Hays County has really been on the front of the fight,
Right.
whether it's Hays CISD, they've been really proactive with awareness. Their student, what is it called? Their
Student advisory.
student
board.
advisory board about, talking to their peers about fentanyl. Having us come do the presentations. They're really, we work really closely with them. Mm-hmm. And obviously the sheriff's department, we
Right.
work really closely with them as well.
Yeah. I actually spoke at my kids' old school board. They went to Wimberley, and I said, look, this is going on in Hays. It's our neighbor. You guys got to be prepared for it. And so then they brought you guys in to the
Yeah.
VFW hall and
Yeah.
whatnot to speak.
But we have not been to the school.
No.
Yeah.
We went for that parent thing.
Yes.
It's the schools, obviously, because we kind of have a captive audience. But one thing that's discouraging is the parent presentations.
They're not showing up.
No.
No.
Should be mandatory.
Eanes they filled their performing arts center at the school. It's like 1,500 capacity, and it was full on the parent night. The other places we've had it, it's hit and miss, mostly miss. And it's, but before this happened, we probably would have been
Yeah.
the miss parents too, because number one, they don't hear about it.
Right.
They don't hear about the event. And then, we have 3 kids. People have kids. People have prior commitments. And one of the things I think that is an issue with parents not being as active, and this is what I tell people all the time, is, especially with drugs, is a lot of people look at fentanyl as like, oh, it's just the next thing. It was weed in the 70s, LSD, and then it was cocaine, and then it was crack, and then it was meth,
And
then
acid.
it was heroin, and now it's just fentanyl. And they look at it like it's just the next drug, but it's so much more potent.
Right.
And
What do they say? The end of a pencil is the size that's lethal?
Yeah. Just a few grains.
Yeah.
On,
you
Yeah,
probably don't
I,
have sugar packets.
During my presentation, I always tell the kids, like, I don't like this photo because it's so magnified. It makes it look like a large amount. And I'll ask kids, who knows how much 2 milligrams is?
Right.
And they'll do this. And I'm like, absolutely not. Like, no. So I'll pull out a pack of Splenda and I'll pour it out, or Anthony will pour it out. And I'll tell them, like, this is just a pack of Splenda, not even enough to to sweeten my tea. But this pack of Splenda is 1,000 milligrams, and had this been fentanyl, it could kill 500 people.
Oh my gosh.
And that's when they can relate. They're like,
yeah,
you know, because they don't understand you know, you need to show them.
Yeah. It's like they have to have a measurement of value to like make it make sense to them.
But even then, you know, we've done presentations where we've left and then a student is being poisoned, you know, and we did a panel in Rockwall, and there was a mental health person talking, and usually at the end of my presentation, I will say something like, Noah was not a bad kid.
Right.
Noah made a bad decision.
Right.
But after hearing this lady talk, she said that kids are not bad. They're not making bad decisions. They're making impulsive decisions.
Yeah.
Kids are not wired to make good decisions, you know? So now I, like, that really hit with me, you know? So now that's what I say, like, Noah made an impulsive decision.
Yeah.
Like, you know, because they could see our presentation and then be offered something in the restroom and just forget what they just saw and what they just heard. And I had a teacher over at the Impact Center here. She's a good friend of mine. She was telling me how frustrated she was with some of the other teachers who were like, how could this person be so stupid? Like, they know fentanyl's out there. How could they be so stupid? A child had, you know, was poisoned. And she's like, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Is these teachers being desensitized to it. Like, that's the problem right there, because it's not the child's fault. Like, it's a mental health problem.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. Ay. Well, I hope with this podcast that it literally gets people interested to show up to parent night and fill those, you know, performance arts buildings where this message is just constantly wash and repeat to that, where then it becomes them, you know, your story becomes them to make the difference that needs to happen. And because you definitely don't want to have, you know, more people go through what you guys went through and have that outcome affect the rest of their life and their siblings' lives. And I mean, you have a 1-year-old that doesn't know Noah.
Doesn't know. And in fact, the last picture I took of Noah was him holding his baby brother when we got home from the hospital.
Yeah. And so just to keep like his memory alive, and so that way that doesn't become other people's memory. Like, that's what you have to hold on hope for, and that your guys' story is that fuel for that. And I have to say that you guys have like the biggest heart to be covering this and traveling with this, but also the strength and courage you have to constantly like relive those moments and relive that, to then be able to portray what it really is. It's not a pretty situation. It's not like some Hollywood movie, you know, where everything has a happy ending. So I have to commend you guys for having the strength and the courage to not just destroy your lives with this, and to have the strength to build what you have built, and to run for Congress trying to make a difference, and with your guys' foundation to make a difference. So
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time today, and thank you for being vulnerable with me and making me ugly cry. Because you're the only person that's made me do that on here. But I hope the best success for you guys.
Thank
and
you.
especially for you and your journey ahead. And hope God protects both of you guys as you walk this path. And let me know if you need any help, because I got some resources too. So, all right.
For sure. Thank you.